As an actor, I should be offended. But anytime a show has actors making fun of actors, it's a good time. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Sixth episode of Poker Faces here, and once again, the road of death that Charlie is on continues. Look. I don't think there's anything that we're going to do to get out of that. I think for the folks who have a hard time saying, "Hey, why does she always end up around death?" or has no one start questioning her about death happening every time she's around? You're going to have to suspend your disbelief on that. I don't think we're going to get any sort of answers or any way that we're kind of dealing with that. In fact, a lot of it comes out of like what happens or ironic situations that sort of take place around her. Some of these she pushes people towards one way or has the seeds where had she not done this, would this have happened? So it ends up being ironic a bit, but I get the fault and I hear what people are saying. It does not bother me enough to not enjoy the show. For the sixth episode called Exit Stage Death, we have a couple of old, I don't like the word old. We have a couple of seasoned actors who are at the end of their career. We have Kathleen, played by Ellen Barkin, and Tim Meadows plays Michael. And they are this duo that used to take place in the show called Spooky and the Cop. Now that I think about it, I do hope that Spooky was a ghost because being African American, it's a lot of issues if that's where we're going with that. But it was a very hokey show, and none of them really take much pride in it. But apparently, it brought them a lot of notoriety, a lot of fame. That fame has subsequently fallen, and they're both sort of grasping for these last straws of relevancy. Something that sometimes actors have a hard time dealing with is when they're no longer famous. What do they do when they sort of fall out of the limelight? Kathleen comes to Michael with a proposal. Says, "Hey, can you come do this last show? Last time we'll do it. Let's do this show together, and sort of go out on a high note, and it'll be tons of money for you." Now, mind you, Michael now lives in a place with his new wife, Ava, who is a self-made billionaire. They're living in a lavish place. So he was recently doing infomercials for cars and whatnot. Now has kind of fallen on greater times. So she's like, "Hey, can you come do this last minute thing for us and for me basically?" And they've had a falling out. They don't get along. They're bickering at every single moment they possibly can. He completely says that he's illiterate, and kind of that's now part of his Wikipedia, and it's a going gag throughout the entire episode that he can't read. He's just doing things. But he originally says no, and then Ava sort of pushes him towards that way because Ava sees how much he loves the acting bug and how he still has that in him. And for her, as we learn, she wants to get that out of him. She wants him to go on the stage and have the most miserable time that he possibly can, so that he can give up the acting thing and just ride at the sunset with her. We think of a 3-week jump, and they're at the play. And one thing that was not mentioned to Michael is that Kathleen is going to be directing, and they have a falling out there. So if you read your contract, you would have known. All of this starts taking place. They come up with these elaborate plans to do this and that, and basically they come to a situation where it appears that they are trying to harm each other. And so there's a light fixture at the top where there's a moment in the play where there's a lot of shaking that happens when aircraft carriers go over. So if she thinks if she loosens that light, it'll fall, and what we're to believe, hit Michael. Michael goes under the stage, and there's a trap door that happens in this show that Kathleen wants to have time and work, and she wants to use that trap door that she's always used from back in the day, which nowadays would be done completely differently. But Phil, the stage manager's like, "All right, if that's what you want to do, we'll do it." Much to the suggestion that they should not. Michael goes to rig that and puts like this frozen dry ice that kind of holds it in place momentarily until there's a moment where Kathleen walks across the stage. Well, we believe Kathleen walks across the stage, and and kills herself. Nothing is as it appears, however, because we learn that both Kathleen and Michael are working together. And so there's this whole situation, and I thought this was a little weird that they were doing it, but they were talking about each other as they were going to rig the traps. They were saying how shriveled dick, like they were just going on and on about each other. And I'm like, well, neither of the other can hear this. Like I imagine, yes, when you first leave them, you're going to still be pissed, but you're not going to go on this entire diatribe the entire way. But there's a reason for it because they know that people are listening. But we see the entire thing sort of go on. Phil, who was the stage manager, who checked everything before, he is asleep. We'll find out why he was asleep later, but he's asleep underneath. So there's nobody really watching the trap door. The moment in the play happens, the light falls. Michael does not get hit, but he startles himself. Because he has heart palpitations. He has heart attack, and Ava already sort of knows this. He has a heart attack. He screams out to Ava, who has his pills. Ava comes running onto stage and falls through the trap door, bops her head as she goes down, and she is dead on the ground. And that was the plan, if you will. After the cops leave, the two, Kathleen and Michael, meet in the dressing room and they start having a make-out session. They get on, and the whole plan was to remove Ava from the table so that they could ride off into the sunset and have her money. Okay. Enter Charlie. Charlie, on her, we don't really, again, like the last episode, we don't really get to see how Charlie wound up here, but she's just now going along the world, getting her odd jobs. I do hope that within the next episode, we do sort of pick up the seeds of her on the run and Benjamin Brad and Ron Perlman coming after her, because now we're starting like, hey, it's been enough episodes since we've seen that. Let's sort of pick that piece back up again. But in this, we don't. She's picking up an odd job. She gets fired from one. She finds Phil, who's outside having a smoke break, and he puts her at the theater, which she hates the theater. They're playing Franklin, which is some offshoot version of Hamilton. But she puts earplugs in. It's like, I don't want to hear any of this. That's sort of her vibe. 3 weeks pass on her end as well, and she's still working there. And then this job with Kathleen and Michael come in. It's a bit more than usual. Everybody's kind of a little bit excited. Some are excited, some are not, because they know that she's a bit of a ball buster. But some are like, oh my God, this is true talent. Like Kathleen is here. But after watching her play a little bit, Kathleen's like, she's lying the entire time. I don't believe anything that she has to say. And then Kathleen comes out, storming off stage after another fight with Michael, and runs into Charlie, who has earplugs in her ears. Clearly has been using them to kind of plug her ears. And Kathleen kind of reads her the riot act. And Charlie sort of gives it back to her and was like, look, I don't believe a damn thing you've ever been saying up there. Nothing you've said in the entire time has been truthful. In fact, it's the least truthful thing I think I've ever seen. And as an actor, Kathleen sort of needed to hear that. She needed to kind of be challenged and punched in the face a little bit to get the impetus to put on a performance of a lifetime. And so then the show goes on and we see the entire situation about the death and whatnot. It is important to note that in this, Ava has given Charlie a pretty nice tip to keep the alcohol flowing. Like, don't stop bringing the alcohol. So she does. We also see in real time why they're speaking to each other off stage for so much, because their mics were live. They never turned their mics off. So the people in the back who were in the cooking area could hear it. Also, the people who were hearing impaired, they also could hear it the entire time. So they were getting the show beyond the show, sort of behind the scenes as that was going along. They were doing that on purpose to sort of add and create an alibi. Charlie notices Kathleen's face right before the light falls and says that, hey, that's the most truthful point that she's ever had in a point. She was completely fearful and in terror. Why? She didn't know at that point, but she knew that Kathleen knew something was happening with that light fixture. Actors always getting in their own way. Kathleen and Michael pretty much were going to get away scot-free. But the plan originally was they would run off and go into hiding for a while and then reappear sometime after, saying that they have found love with each other after this grief. Kathleen wants to flip the script a little bit, and because she's got that acting bug again, she's got a performance. She's like, hey, I got a better idea. let's do another show in honor of Ava. And Mike's like, hold on, we should not do that at all. We should get up out of here. And Kathleen's clearly the one sort of steering this ship. The third piece of the play, Rebecca finds the script that Michael needs in his coat pocket. But it's not the script for the play that they're doing. It's a script for the lines that he has off stage to sort of remember what he's supposed to say off mic during her monologue. And she's like, I killed that monologue, but I know what you guys are doing. You guys are setting this all up and doing all of this so that you could kill Ava. I'm in on it. What makes matters worse, you weren't even trying to hide it, because this is the exact same thing you two did in your show in season 6, episode 11, Exit Stage Death. Someone needs you to come about some money. And so she blackmails them. She leaves her bank account number and her amount that she wants. And then she's like, pay me. Michael's like, cool, we got to pay her. Kathleen's like, nah, we ain't gonna do that. And she looks at her doggy treats that are peanut, which we've heard much earlier in the episode that Rebecca has an allergy to peanuts. So she plans to take her off the board to continue this ruse going. What we then see is Charlie going to Charlie mode, and she starts figuring things out. Now, what's cool about this one is in a lot of the episodes before, she was doing it because she had a connection with the victim, and she kind of wanted to know they were too good of a person for this to sort of happen to them. This time, she outside of pouring her alcohol, she doesn't really meet the victim. She does feel a little bit at blame, like, hey, maybe I lifted her up too much and she wasn't able to get up to the stage perfectly, but she doesn't really know Ava. Hers is because Phil, the person who got her the job, gets fired because he seems to have been asleep on the job and is taking the blame for all of this. Now, we learned that there was Ambien that Kathleen has that sort of drugged Phil and took him out. So it wasn't his own negligence that caused this. But Charlie's like a dog on a bone, or she's just like Robert De Niro in Heat. She's not letting this go. So she is finding things and kind of going to the past. She thinks that Kathleen was trying to kill Michael, then Michael was trying to kill Kathleen, and then she starts putting the pairs together. She can't quite figure it out until she finds the frozen ice piece. Once she gets the dry ice piece, things start to click a little bit for her. Then she notices that she tries to tell Rebecca what's going on, and she sees that Rebecca's lying about the situation. It's like, hey, are you in love with these folks too? She's just trying to figure out what pair is going on, which is a fascinating thing because actors are paid to lie, so they're all doing it, but they're doing it poorly. She can kind of read through the BS and get to the meat of it. But in a funny bit, that sort of happens while Kathleen is trying to kill Rebecca and puts doggy treats on the stage. Charlie is interrupting the play from venues of backstage, either through the fridge or through the window, to warn everybody in this who she thinks is in danger. And then she eventually comes to find out that, oh crap, the two of them are in it together. So she sets a trap to sort of let them be the ones to tell their story, if you will. And so what happens is she knocks the peanut stuff out of Rebecca's hands as she's about to eat it. And then backstage, Kathleen and Michael discuss what's going on. And like, she's like, why would you do that without me? Like, why would you put this plan into place? Kathleen's like, yo, turn off your mic, because the mics are still alive. Turn them off. So they talk and they start discussing, and it's like, well, blah, blah, blah. They run over their whole plan. Mind you, those hearing accessible ones, there's some police officers in the audience this time. And the officers hear everything because Charlie has put a live mic in a dish that wasn't seen in their backstage room, and they know that they've been sort of dead rights caught. But what's crazy here, and then this is sort of a phenomenal way, there was a moment earlier in the episode where someone says, hey, she's like, this is just like a mall performance that's happening here. Like, I don't appreciate any of this. She's like, why does anybody even do this? And the one person tells Charlie, like, hey, at least one person each time these performances happen takes something from it. They learn something. Their eyes are open. And that sort of happens for Charlie at the end of this episode, because they know they're dead to rights. They're like, well, we can't do anything. So they go out there and act their butts off, put the best performance that they've ever put on for that finale as the cops start coming into parade. And what you can see is Charlie's looking in the back and she's seeing it. Her eyes are watering up a little bit. she gets it. At that moment, she got it. A fun little episode, kind of making fun of theater and stage and all that good stuff, but still following the rules that we have set up so far for Charlie. Ellen Barkin clearly is having fun in this. I think we've had 3 episodes in a row that have sort of dealt with just the people around it. We haven't had any sort of callback to that first episode with Benjamin Bratt and Perlman's character coming back. I think once we get to 7, we need to sort of speed that. Obviously, still do the take the 15 minutes, 20 minutes to build the characters that are new. But I do think we need to have a little tag at the end that's been like 10 minutes trying to see how she gets out of this and how she gets to the next spot. But I love the taking the time to spend with these new characters because it makes them feel lived in. It makes the world feel big, and it makes it feel like, hey, we've earned. A lot of times, because this happens with Law and Order. In Law and Order, we kill those people in 5 minutes, maybe even 2 minutes. Like before we even get to the dome song, they're gone. Here, we've spent some time that, hey, we now feel some type of attachment to these folks, and it's easier to root for, root against, or be indifferent towards these people. We've at least been given the choice to do so, and I think that's what makes this sort of work better. Charlie coming in, being the death angel, that works too. But I think some of it's out of irony. Like she gives Kathleen the speech to go rah rah. Maybe that's what sort of turns her back into like, hey, let's do this another night. If she didn't give her that rah rah speech, knowing that she was going to kill anyway, giving her that rah rah speech, like, hey, maybe I can do this better for real. That sort of turns her that way. Giving Ava that wine sort of put Ava off, like she's a little not in her best wits when she goes up there on stage. All of those things sort of play into it. And I think at some point those characters should be able to find Charlie pretty easy by following the bodies. What did you guys think about the 6th episode of Exit Stage Death? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.